In this video, I'm going to show you how you can effectively dropship on Depop. Now, Depop was a website that I used to sell on a lot as a reseller back in the day when I literally sold products that I had. But since I've become a dropshipper, I was really sleeping on it for a while, up until probably about a year ago when I started testing different websites that I could effectively dropship on. And when I first started dropshipping on Depop, my very first account actually got suspended because I did it the wrong way. But that's a good thing, obviously, for me and for you in this case, because now I know exactly what not to do and how to do it effectively so that you can actually dropship on the platform, make sales, and build a consistent, sustainable, long-term dropshipping business on the platform. Now, this is a really cool website because there is sales velocity, a lot like a Mercari or a Poshmark, right? It's not going to be the sales velocity of like an Amazon or an Etsy or a Facebook Marketplace back during like the heyday of Facebook Marketplace dropshipping, but it is a platform that you will make consistent sales on. You will be able to make multiple hundreds, maybe even $1,000 plus profit on this platform monthly if you do it the right way, right? You don't want to jump the gun. You don't want to get overzealous and just launch a bunch of products on here, because if you do that, you will inevitably get suspended. It's a slow, methodical process building consistent listings that are quality, and over time, you will be able to actually build a store that gets consistent sales. So the very first thing before we jump into the tutorial here is that you need to understand, just like Mercari, right? On Depop, you can't only use stock images. So if you're drop shipping on, let's say, Facebook Marketplace, you can just port over the images from Amazon or eBay or Home Depot or whatever supplier you're using and use the stock images. It's totally fine. On Poshmark, for example, if you're dropshipping on Poshmark, again, you could just take an Amazon listing or a Walmart listing, copy it over using something like ZDrop, use the stock images, and it's totally fine. On somewhere like Depop, you cannot use stock images. I used to teach that you could use stock images and then just add a review image at the end of your listing for Mercari. And on Depop specifically, I used to teach the same thing, whereas like you could just use all the stock images, because why wouldn't you, right? That was my logic. It's like, if you can use all the stock images so that a customer can understand what they're buying better and see the product in a better light, obviously, because those images are professionally done, and then just add a review image in the beginning of the listing to comply with Depop's terms of service. Just like Mercari, you can't have all stock images on Depop. I used to say that that was okay. However, that wisens up the platform to the fact that you're dropshipping, and it just makes you a target if, or say, like something were to go wrong with a tracking number, or some customer was upset that potentially they got like an Amazon box. It doesn't happen frequently. I'm just kind of saying, like, you want to take all the precautions to build up a long-term sustainable store on Depop in this example, because you want to be able to make these profits every single month going forward if you're going to put the work in, the time in, or at least the money behind a VA to actually do this, okay? So I only say now, only add review images, do not use stock images. So let's go through an example of listing on Depop. There's two ways to list on Depop. So the very first way is to do dropship arbitrage. After this, I'm going to teach you a way where you can dropship directly. Both of them work just like I always teach when you're doing like Mercari, for example, if you've gotten the newsletter. If you haven't gotten the newsletter, it's basically just every month I send out an email blast to everybody that subscribes, documenting exactly what's working for me in e-commerce and how I'm doing that strategy-wise and everything that comes with that. So one of the things that I said in that newsletter on Mercari, it reigns true on Depop as well, okay? So you can use two ways. You can either dropship directly using all images that somebody has taken themselves, so it looks like you're taking the product pictures, if you can find listings like that. I'm going to show you some examples of how you can. Or you can do the dropship arbitrage, which is probably the safest way to do it. Order to yourself first and then ship it out to the customer using the Depop label. Because if you're shipping out using the Depop label and you're using review images, there's literally no blueprint whatsoever to prove that you're dropshipping. So it's the safest, most sustainable way. So I'm going to teach you that here first, and then I'll run you through some examples of actually dropshipping directly if you want to stick around for that method. Okay, they both work. One's a little bit safer, one's obviously a little bit more hands-off. Both of them work effectively. So the first thing that you need to understand here when we're dropshipping on somewhere where we need to use review images is you need to first and foremost pick a product that has a lot of reviews, right? Because you're going to need to figure out a good review image, or in most cases, a bunch of good review images to put in your product listing so that you can obviously get interest, clicks in it, and eventually eventually sales, right? Because people are going to buy this listing based off the images that you're putting in your listing. So those review images need to be good. Just to kind of pull through a bunch of examples, let's find listings that have a lot of reviews. Obviously, we don't want to list paper. Who's going to buy paper with review products? Scotch tape, not a good example. I'm going to click on this frog listing just because I know right now, currently, a lot of home decor and a lot of like garden decor, since it's warming up and it's becoming summer, sells really well. Another thing that sells really well on a lot of these platforms where you're doing dropship arbitrage is like sunglasses, because a lot of people take good review images of sunglasses, so keep that in mind. Something that you want to avoid is like clothing listings that obviously aren't sunglasses, because in that aspect, you have to ask yourself like, okay, if somebody's going to take a review image of a piece of clothing, they're not going to like hang it up really nice and take a review image of it. It's probably either going to be like them showing it like laying on a bed, which doesn't look that good. In most cases, it's going to be on their body, which you can't really portray that to a customer as new. So let's pick a few here. We're going to pick this one. We'll also scroll down to this DeWalt Toolbox, and we'll see if we can find some good suggestions of products on these. So we're going to scroll down. This is relatively cheap. It also has a decent amount of review images, so we'll check that product out. This one has like $6.96. Typically, I look for ones in the thousands, and I tell my VAs to do the same thing. Not a whole lot here. Here's another one with $4.37. This, again, not that great. Not really getting suggested a lot of products here with a lot of reviews, so let's go a different route. So this one has $8.50. Let's check that one out. This one right here, $1,900. That's perfect. That's going to be plenty of reviews. There's going to be some good product images in those reviews that we can then utilize on our listing. And let's find one more just so I can sort through a bunch here. Let's pick this one. All right, so let's take this Milwaukee one, for example. Let's say we wanted to list this on Depop, okay? Well, the first thing that you want to do is make sure that there's a good review image, because there's no sense in starting to list it if there's not a good review image, right? So you want to click on the ratings, and that's going to take you down to the ratings here, and then you're going to see all customer images. Now you're just looking for a good image that displays what the product is and makes it look good, okay? So this one's not terrible right there. That kind of looks pretty solid. It even still has the actual label on it, so this is a pretty good one. And we're just going to take a snippet of this picture, and bam. Now, another little caveat is don't take the black around that. Also, if you're going fast, some of my VAs make this mistake sometimes. Like, definitely don't get, like, in this case, it's like a vertical image, so you're not going to take like these arrows. But if it's a more square image, sometimes the arrows will be in the picture if you just right-click save. Avoid that. It makes it so obvious that it's a review image taken from a listing, okay? So just avoid that in that case. So now we're going to save this. We'll just say box 1. Doesn't matter what you save it as. Then this one's not terrible. It just looks like a bunch of them. This could be misconstrued, and this person could get confused based on what they're buying, because you have a bunch of stackable ones. But just for the sake of saving your time in this tutorial, I'll take this one and I'll add it. Basically, all you're doing is you're looking for 1 to 5. 5 would be ideal, but obviously if you can't find a bunch of images, 1 to 3 is good as well. You want at least more than 1 typically. Unless there's only 1, then list that. That's totally fine. Images in your listing to potentially make it so that customers can buy it with confidence and also understand what they're getting. So for example, like, you don't want to just take any review image here. Like, if we took a review image that was like terrible, like, that's actually pretty good. I was going to use this as an example, but I'll just take that as an example of a good image. But you'll get the picture. Like, you don't want to use bad images. That's not going to sell a listing. That defeats the whole purpose of doing this. Another thing to keep in mind is if you're listing like a variation listing, like I referenced sunglasses, often you'll see like sunglasses can have variation listings. So make sure that all your images, if you're taking review images, are of the same variation. I've made that mistake in the past. It's not the biggest mistake in the world, but it might confuse the customer, and you might end up sending them like the brown ones when they expected the black ones, okay? So just keep that in mind. Now that we have 3 good review images, we've proved the fact that this one has good images that we can use. So now we're just going to copy it over to Depop. You see here, copy to Depop. Typically, I don't copy directly in my own like ecom business. I don't copy directly to Depop doing this. I usually have my VAs copy to Mercari, and then we'll use List Perfectly to copy over to Depop, because it actually moves a lot faster that way. So that's just the way that I approach it. But this tutorial is obviously just dropshipping on Depop. Paste it in there, let it do its job. Also, you want to avoid any of these like little bullet points that kind of have like emojis. It doesn't work on these platforms, and a lot of them don't like it. Mercari doesn't like it. Depop doesn't like it. I think you actually can't even list them on Mercari, but obviously we delete them anyway, so I'm not sure. It's been a while since we've tried. So then once you get that in there, you're just going to delete everything that you don't want in the description. So again, just like I always say in these tutorials, avoid keywords like the brand name. So if it's like a third-party brand, you don't want their brand name in there. If it's a money-back guarantee, you don't want that in there. If it's something about it selling on Amazon, because in this case, we're taking this listing from Amazon, you don't want that in there as well, okay? Typically on Amazon, that's gonna be the last bullet point, so just keep that in mind. Also, I'm gonna X out this lifetime warranty there. So the very next thing when you copy it over is you can't use the stock images, so we're gonna remove the stock images and add our review images in. So we're gonna go to the review images, always put the best review image first. In this case, all of them are pretty solid, so we'll stick to that. So if somebody's looking at these images, it looks like we took this picture ourselves in our garage, and so they're buying directly from somebody. It does not look like we're dropshipping this. That's the whole point of dropshipping on somewhere like Depop or Mercari. Then we're gonna categorize this just like you always would. Typically, I sell a lot of clothing accessories on Depop, but you can also start to see that they're adding new categories. You can sell pretty much anything on here now. Within reason, there's some specific things that they don't allow you to sell, but you'll learn that as you list. So this is gonna be like home, we'll categorize it in, then we'll say like home access. Well, that's actually storage and organization. There's no real perfect category for this one since it's like power tool, like box or like storage, but I always tell my VAs just pick the best category. So what is this in? Well, we'll just say office. Why not? The brand, you don't need to put the brand in there. You could, because in this case, this is a recognizable brand. It's Milwaukee. If it's a third-party brand, just avoid it. You don't need to put that in there. So Milwaukee's something that like people actually want, so you do want to put that in there. The condition's obviously going to be brand new. I always say put the quantity 10 for my VAs just because it's easier to just add a 0 when the quantity's already 1, but you can make the quantity whatever you want. If you want to make it 1 and then just relist them. If you want to make it 3, whatever you want to do, I always just personally say 10. The color, you can add the color if you want. Any of these other, descriptive specs, if you want to add those, I don't specifically add them unless it's super obvious. So if I were going through this listing, I might say like red, just because it's clearly red. There's no age, there's no style. I always say boost the listing. Now, keep in mind that you do need to mark your product up enough to account for this boost listing fee, okay? So that's 8%. But I promise you, the more you click this on your items, the more you will sell on Depop. It's been working very well for me recently, and I'll probably put that in the next monthly newsletter on what's working in e-commerce. Again, linked at the bottom of the description if you want to join that newsletter. So here's now where you can either pick ship on my own, right? So if you're shipping directly to the customer, or ship with Depop. I don't recommend that using something like Amazon, you ship directly to the customer. I recommend using Dropship Arbitrage. You can do it, although if you get a TBA tracking number and then you use something like Track Taco, you can potentially sometimes run into issues, and that's how I actually got suspended on my first account. So you can do it, just understand that like if a customer gets annoyed or if they report the fact that their item's not there and that your tracking number's wrong, keep in mind I also use like Amazon stock images at that point in time, so that could have definitely had something to do with that as well. If I'm going to spend my time listing, or I'm going to spend my money paying a VA to list, I want to make sure that I'm building a sustainable business that I can make money off a month from now, 6 months from now, right? So I always say just do the safe thing and build a long-term sustainable business that you can rely on that income month to month, and not just like quick hits of like a few $1,000s and then you're suspended and you can never sell there again. You also always, little caveat, can get another Depop account. It's very, very easy. I actually did a video on how you can get another phone number like within the US very easily. I put it on the second channel. If anybody needs that video, just drop a comment and I'll link it directly to you. So then, like I said, you pick ship with Depop, and then you'd select your address, the parcel size. If you need to know the parcel size and weight, you just come back to the Amazon listing. You scroll down to the product dimensions, and it usually tells you the dimensions and the weight, which is right here, 23 pounds. And then you'd mark your price up. So if you copied with Z-Drop, it should have already marked your price up to $243. I think I have mine set to mark up at 60% right now. So $243 is what we charge. Okay, so it's marked up probably even more than, maybe that is 60%. I can't do math right now. It's too much math. But from 140 to 243, so there's plenty of margin to make my 8% for boosting it, as well as the shipping charge that they would pay. And then you'd post it. And it's really that simple. Now, if you're shipping on your own, you would click ship on your own. You could offer free shipping, or you could charge for shipping. I always offer free shipping. I feel like that works better. And then you'd post it. So that's how you do dropship arbitrage for the most part. When you're doing Amazon listings, I typically recommend dropship arbitrage. Now, if you want to dropship directly, I'd recommend something like eBay or Poshmark, because on those platforms, there's a lot of other sellers that basically list with images that look like review images, and that's still crucial. That's number one and most important when listing on Depop. But they also ship directly using either If it's Poshmark specifically, it'll be a USPS because it's USPS priority mail. Or if it's eBay, it'll either be a USPS, a FedEx, or a UPS tracking number, which is crucial because then you can put the actual tracking number into Depop when it ships, when you ship directly to the customer and you're not doing the dropship arbitrage. So that's the main distinction. Either one, do Amazon and do the dropship arbitrage using review images, or use eBay or Poshmark listings where there's images that look like they've been taken by somebody, you know, in their house, like with an actual camera, and it doesn't look too stock photo-ish. But also another key distinction when you're dropshipping directly using Poshmark or eBay is you need to make sure, like I said, that you're getting a UPS, a USPS, or a FedEx tracking number, okay? So I personally use eBay and Poshmark. If you know of another supplier that does that every single time, by all means, you can use them. Just make sure that it hits those two parameters. Now, if you do want to drop ship directly on Depop, it's just as simple as finding a listing on one of those platforms that I just referenced that has good images that look like they've been taken by somebody, you know, themselves at their house with their own camera. So here's a perfect example of a listing like that, right? This second image right here is something that you could drop ship directly on eBay, knowing that you'd get a UPS, FedEx, or USPS tracking number from this seller that you could then input to Depop directly that corresponds with this actual sale. And this product looks like it's been taken by somebody with like their own camera in the grass, okay? So this is a perfect listing that you could utilize. Here's another example of one, right? So this Ryobi one, you can see I literally purchased this in the past myself, and it's currently out of stock now, but I sold this countless times on both Mercari and on Depop. And this picture looks like somebody was taking pictures of Ryobi power tool products with their own camera in their garage. It sold perfectly. Now, this is an example of one that is a bad one, right? Because these images right here are clearly stock photos. You're not gonna be able to get away with listing something like this long-term on the platform. Either on somewhere like Mercari or Depop, they're gonna take that off and hit you with like a strike or a warning, or they'll just suspend you altogether when they realize that you're dropshipping and they see a bunch of listings like this. So do not do that. So avoid listings with stock images like this or like this, for example. All of these images are bad for these platforms. Another two examples of good suppliers that you could use, there are other ones out there, don't get me wrong. Just eBay's the easiest example for me to use because there's so many products like that. But Poshmark has a lot of sellers that obviously take their own product pictures. You just want to make sure that when you're doing it on Poshmark or any of these other suppliers, obviously like eBay, for example, you want to make sure that there's multiples in that listing, because if you go through the trouble to list it, you don't want that listing to sell out super fast, and then you won't be able to actually find that product for that price in most cases, or to at least be tougher and you'll have to scramble to find it. So you don't want to face that issue. So make sure that you're buying from somebody with multiple quantity. I usually say like 3 or more is good. So Poshmark, again, another place that you could find those products. Another great place that's actually super underrated is Etsy as well, because a lot of Etsy sellers will take their own product pictures and stage them fairly well. And then you know that also you're getting usually a USPS tracking number, but sometimes it can be UPS or FedEx as well. So let me run you through an example of actually listing this, directly dropshipping this from this eBay seller on Depop, okay? So we copy to Depop using Z-Drop. Again, Z-Drop always linked in the description with a coupon code if you want to save a little bit of money. I think it's like $12 a month now. I honestly don't even know. But with a coupon code, I think you save $1 or $2 off the monthly price every month. Paste it in there. Now, in this case, we're not going to delete the actual images because they're not stock photos. I am going to delete this middle one because it does look a little stocky, and these other two already kind of convey what this product is fairly well. So again, we want to delete anything out of the description that tells us that like this is selling on another platform or doesn't really have the right information that fits this platform, or anything about another seller, another money back guarantee, whatever. So I'm going to delete this. I'm going to delete find many, options and get the best deals for, and we'll just stick with that. Now, if I really wanted to take this to the next level, I could go back to the eBay listing. I could go down and take all these product features here and then paste them in there. But for the sake of saving your time, I'm not going to do that right now. Another way that you could do it is you could go to ChatGPT and say, hey, I'm making a product listing for, and then paste what the listing is in there. So I'd paste 2-pack for Makita 18 volt, blah, 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 into ChatGPT. This is something I've been doing a lot on Etsy lately for my print on demand listings. And then basically tell them like, hey, ChatGPT, this is what I'm listing. Make a product listing that's well written, but also stuffed full of keywords that reads well. And you'd be surprised, like it pumps it out super quick. It's incredible. You'll have a bunch of keywords, so you'll be higher in a bunch of search results for those keywords. And you didn't have to like spend 20 minutes writing your own detailed description and do a bunch of product research and keyword research to actually create that. So that's another way that you could approach it. Now, category, this is another power tool, so there's not really a category for that on Depop right now. So I'm going to say home. We'll say home accessories. and we'll just say office. The brand, now typically, again, on Depop, I don't usually put the brand in, but for this case, Makita is a recognizable brand, although it's not here listed on Depop, since, you know, clearly most people don't sell power tools on Depop, but just for an example. So you could put the brand in there if it's recognizable and also it's on Depop. The condition's going to be new. Again, I always put quantity 10, but the quantity doesn't really matter. The color in this case doesn't matter. None of these things do. The age, the style. Again, always boost your listings. I promise you, as long as you're accounting for that 8% fee in your profit margin already, it's worth it. You will sell a lot more by doing this. The country location is United States. The city is usually Philadelphia for me, but you could put whatever your city is in, obviously. Now, since we're not doing the dropship arbitrage, we're going to do ship on your own, and then we're going to offer free shipping. That's what I recommend. You could play around with it, like split test, you know, I would say list half with free shipping and half like where you're charging shipping. See what works better for you. Since I'm already marking my prices up significantly, free shipping always sells better. They even tell you that, like, this item is now twice as likely to sell because you're offering free shipping. When if you toggle that off, that goes away, right? Items with free shipping are twice as likely to sell. Toggle it on, they literally tell you that. So I've split tested this. I didn't just take their word for it. In almost all cases, not every case, but almost all cases, offering free shipping is always the best way to go. And then we're going to post it. It's really that simple. So that's how you dropship on Depop, both directly to the customer and using dropship arbitrage. Again, the same method and strategy is taken into dropshipping on Mercari, but I don't teach that publicly because, like, I'm not going to create a video on YouTube like how to dropship on Mercari for other reasons. I've talked about them in the past. Mercari sent me cease and desist letters. They told me to stop trying to teach people how to do it, so I don't do it anymore, but the same strategy applies there. Take it and run with it if you want to. I highly recommend that you at least test this platform. I'm not saying that if you're already doing a number of like e-commerce business models, or if you're already dropshipping on a number of platforms, Depop should be your main focus. It should not, but it definitely should be in that second tier of things that you're focused on, like a Bonanza, for example, or a Depop, right? Or something like that, because you can make sales here. I promise you, with a little bit of effort, you can make a few $100s profit every month here, if not $1,000 profit plus, with enough listings consistently over time. And the best part about this, in my opinion, is if you're already doing it, which I highly recommend that you put Mercari in like your top tier. So like my top tier, honestly, if you force me, not in this order, these are just the ones coming to my mind. Amazon, Facebook Marketplace, Etsy, Poshmark, and Mercari are the top tier in my opinion. And then like you have Bonanza, Depop, and the list goes on and on. But like the good part about it is if you're already using this method on Mercari with the Mercari dropshipping, that's kind of why I merged them in this tutorial, then you could just use something like List Perfectly and take that product over in seconds to Depop. And so you don't really need to spend any more time. If you're already doing it on Mercari, just use List Perfectly, morph it over to Depop in seconds. I'll drop an affiliate link to List Perfectly down in the description if you want to grab that as well. So really hope this helps, guys. As always, it's just what works for me. Any questions, let me know, and I'll see you in the next one.